The rain poured mercilessly onto the crowded city streets as Margaret Wilson clutched her worn shopping bag with trembling hands. At 80 years old, her once steady legs now betrayed her with each uncertain step. The bus lurched to a stop, the driver's impatient voice announcing Jefferson Avenue, next stop downtown. Margaret rose slowly, her arthritic joints protesting every movement. The line of passengers behind her shifted restlessly, sighs of irritation punctuating the stuffy air. "Could you possibly move any slower?" A man in an expensive suit muttered loudly enough for everyone to hear. Laughter rippled through the bus. Her cheeks burning with shame, Margaret tried to hurry. That was her first mistake. As she reached the steep steps leading down to the sidewalk, her foot slipped on the rain-slicked metal. Time seemed to slow as she tumbled forward, her fragile body crashing onto the wet pavement, shopping contents scattering across the dirty ground. The bus driver merely glanced back, then closed the doors. The vehicle pulled away, leaving Margaret sprawled on the sidewalk, rainwater soaking through her clothes. Passers-by averted their eyes, quickening their pace. Some even stepped around her fallen groceries, crushing her carefully budgeted items underfoot. A teenager paused briefly, raised his phone, and snapped several photos before walking away with a smirk. Margaret's humiliation was now immortalized in digital form, ready to become another viral sensation mocking the elderly. "Are you all right?" A gentle voice cut through Margaret's humiliation. Looking up through tear-filled eyes, she saw a young woman with vibrant red hair kneeling beside her, seemingly unconcerned about the rain ruining her pristine white uniform. "I'm Ellie," the woman said, carefully helping Margaret to her feet. "I'm a nurse at Memorial Hospital. Let's get you somewhere dry and make sure you're not hurt." "My groceries," Margaret whispered, looking at the scattered items. "It took my entire pension check to buy them." Without hesitation, Ellie began gathering the salvageable items, placing them carefully back into the torn bag. "Some can be saved," she said with a reassuring smile. "And don't worry about the rest. We'll figure something out." At the small cafe across the street, the owner took one look at Margaret's soaked clothes and Ellie's determined expression and ushered them to a table in the corner. "On the house," he insisted, placing steaming cups of tea before them. As Margaret's trembling subsided, she studied the young nurse's face. "Why did you stop?" "No one else did." Ellie's eyes softened. "My grandmother raised me. She used to say that how we treat the elderly shows who we truly are." She paused, a shadow crossing her features. "She died alone last year. A fall in her apartment. No one found her for 3 days." Margaret reached across the table, her weathered hand covering Ellie's smooth one. "I'm sorry, dear." What neither woman noticed was the elegantly dressed man watching them intently from across the cafe. Richard Thornfield, CEO of Thornfield Senior Care, had witnessed the entire incident from the moment Margaret fell. His calculating eyes hadn't missed a single detail: the bus driver's indifference, the pedestrian's avoidance, and most importantly, Ellie's compassion. As the woman prepared to leave, the cafe door opened violently. The man in the expensive suit from the bus stormed in, his face contorted with anger. He marched directly to their table, phone in hand. "You," he snarled at Margaret. "Do you have any idea who I am?" "I missed a crucial meeting because that bus was delayed by your little ... performance." Ellie stood protectively. She fell. She could have been seriously injured. "And now my face is all over social media." He continued, ignoring Ellie. "That teenager's video of me harassing an old lady has gone viral. My company's stock is already dropping. I could sue you for defamation." "I believe," Richard Thornfield interrupted, approaching their table with measured steps, "that would be an ill-advised course of action, Mr. Harrington." His voice carried the unmistakable weight of authority. Margaret Wilson here was once the city's most formidable civil rights attorney before her retirement. and I, for one, would be happy to represent her pro bono. The suited man's face paled as he recognized Richard. Without another word, he turned and left the cafe. Margaret looked at Richard with surprise. "I was a school librarian for 40 years, young man. I've never practiced law." Richard smiled enigmatically. He doesn't know that. The next morning, Ellie was surprised to find Richard Thornfield himself waiting in the hospital lobby. "Miss Eleanor Jenkins?" he asked, his voice carrying the unmistakable authority of wealth and power. "I'd like to discuss your interaction with an elderly woman yesterday." Ellie felt a chill. Was this about violating some protocol by helping a stranger? Was she in trouble? "I was off duty, sir. You showed exceptional compassion," he interrupted, his tone softening slightly. "Something increasingly rare these days." He handed her a business card embossed with gold lettering. "I'm expanding Thornfield Senior Care to include in-home assistance programs. I need someone with genuine empathy to develop and lead it." Ellie stared at the card, stunned. "But I'm just a floor nurse. I don't have management experience." "Experience can be acquired. Authentic compassion cannot," Richard replied firmly. "The position pays triple your current salary." As Richard left, a fellow nurse named Diana approached Ellie, her eyes wide. "Do you know who that was?" she whispered. "Richard Thornfield is ruthless. They say he built his empire by buying nursing homes, cutting staff, and doubling resident fees. Be careful, Ellie, but the prospect of helping people like Margaret and the financial security that came with it was too tempting to ignore." 2 days later, Ellie found herself at Margaret's small apartment, explaining the bizarre turn of events. "So, you see, I can offer you free in-home care services as part of our pilot program," she concluded, still somewhat dazed by her sudden career change. Margaret's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Nothing in this world is truly free, child. What's the catch?" "No catch," Ellie promised. "Just your feedback to help improve the service." What Ellie didn't know was that Richard Thornfield's interest wasn't purely philanthropic. His company was under investigation for elder neglect, and he desperately needed positive publicity. Margaret would be the perfect success story if everything went according to plan. Meanwhile, the video of Margaret's fall had gained millions of views. Comment sections filled with cruel jokes about tumbling Granny, mixed with outrage at the suited man's behavior. The internet had found its latest controversy, with Margaret unwittingly at the center. Over the following weeks, Margaret's apartment transformed. Safety rails appeared in her bathroom, her kitchen was reorganized for easier access, and a medical alert system was installed. Ellie visited regularly, bringing not just professional care, but genuine friendship. "You've changed my life," Margaret admitted one afternoon as they shared tea. "For the first time in years, I'm not afraid of falling with no one to help me." Ellie smiled, but something troubled her. During her training at Thornfield headquarters, she'd glimpsed disturbing documents, budget cuts, understaffing plans, and marketing strategies that promised care they couldn't possibly deliver. "Is something wrong?" Margaret asked, her eyes still sharp despite her age. Ellie hesitated. "The company funding this program, I'm not sure their intentions are entirely honorable." Margaret's laugh surprised her. "My dear, I've lived 8 decades. I can spot sincerity from manipulation. Whatever this company's motives, your care is genuine. That's what matters." Unknown to both women, their conversations were being recorded. Richard Thornfield listened to the latest audio file in his sleek office, his expression darkening at Ellie's doubts. "She's becoming a problem," he told his assistant. "Prepare termination papers." "Sir," his assistant ventured cautiously, "she's the only real success we have. The investigators are visiting next week." Richard's fingers drummed impatiently on his mahogany desk. "Fine, after the investigation, but I want her watched." That evening, Diana, Ellie's nursing colleague, visited her apartment unexpectedly. "I've been digging into Thornfield's past," she said, spreading documents across Ellie's kitchen table. 3 former facilities shut down for violations, residents relocated without family notification. And look at this, she pointed to financial records showing massive insurance fraud. How did you get these? Ellie asked, stunned. My brother works in the state investigations department, Diana replied. Thornfield isn't expanding into in-home care out of generosity. He's hiding assets before the government freezes his accounts. And using you as the perfect distraction, the compassionate face of a rotten company. When Ellie arrived at Margaret's apartment the next morning, she found the door slightly ajar. Heart racing, she pushed it open. Margaret? The apartment was immaculate but empty. On the kitchen table sat Margaret's medical alert button and a handwritten note. They know. Don't trust anyone. Then Ellie's phone rang. Richard Thornfield. Ah, Miss Jenkins. I was calling about our star client. She seems to have disappeared rather suddenly. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? No, Ellie lied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I just arrived for our regular appointment. Well, when you find her, and I know you will remind her that leaving the program could have implications for her healthcare coverage. The threat was thinly veiled. After hanging up, Ellie noticed a small photo that had fallen beneath Margaret's chair, a younger Margaret, standing beside a distinguished man outside a courthouse. Turning it over, she read, Victory against Westfield Care Homes, 1985. With sudden clarity, Ellie realized why Margaret had seemed so familiar from the beginning. Ellie tracked down the only person who might know where Margaret had gone, the cafe owner who had helped them that rainy day. He led her through his kitchen to a back room where, to her relief, Margaret sat calmly sipping tea. You found me sooner than I expected, Margaret smiled. You're not just a retired librarian, are you? Ellie asked, showing her the photograph. Margaret's eyes twinkled. I was both, but yes, before my retirement, I specialized in elder law. That's how I recognized Thornfield's tactics immediately. This isn't his first attempt to use vulnerable seniors as publicity shields, but why not expose him immediately? Evidence, dear. You need irrefutable proof to take down someone like Richard Thornfield. Margaret revealed a small recording device identical to the one in her apartment. These have been collecting conversations for weeks, but we need more internal documents proving the fraud. I think I know how to get those, Ellie said, thinking of Diana's connections. Over the next few days, they assembled a small group, Diana and her investigator brother, the cafe owner, and surprisingly, the bus driver from that fateful day who had been fired after the viral video and now wanted redemption. Together, they uncovered a web of corruption stretching beyond Thornfield to city officials who had been bribed to overlook violations in exchange for kickbacks and campaign contributions. The day of the inspection arrived. Government officials toured the Thornfield facilities, nodding approvingly at the immaculate rooms and smiling staff. The final stop, Margaret's apartment, the showcase of their in-home care program. Margaret had returned just hours before, pretending nothing had happened. As cameras flashed and officials praised the initiative, she stood proudly beside Ellie, but when the microphone was offered to her for a testimonial, she hesitated. Mrs. Wilson? Richard prompted, his smile strained. Would you like to tell everyone about the wonderful care you've received? Margaret looked directly into the cameras. The care I've received from Ellie has been exceptional, she began, her voice suddenly strong. But I've recently learned that Thornfield Senior Care plans to eliminate this program immediately after today's inspection. The room froze. Richard's face contorted with rage and disbelief. You see, Margaret continued, pulling a small recorder from her pocket, I may be old, but I'm not stupid. When strangers installed safety equipment in my home, I wondered what else they might be installing. So I bought my own recording device. She pressed play, and Richard's cold voice filled the room. Once the inspection passes, terminate the program. It's too expensive to maintain. Before Richard could respond, the doors opened. Diana's brother entered with 2 federal agents. Richard Thornfield, we have a warrant for your arrest on charges of healthcare fraud, elder abuse, and witness intimidation. Chaos erupted. As officials demanded explanations and reporters fired questions, Ellie stared at Margaret in amazement. You knew all along. The elderly woman's eyes twinkled. My late husband was a detective for 40 years, dear. He taught me a thing or two. The story exploded beyond the viral video of Margaret's fall. News outlets now featured her triumphant takedown of a corrupt elder care empire. The same internet that had mocked her now celebrated her courage. 6 months later, Thornfield Senior Care had been restructured under government supervision. Richard Thornfield had resigned in disgrace and awaited trial. And through a series of events that some called justice and others called fate, Ellie Jenkins had been appointed as the new director of operations. The suited man who had mocked Margaret on the bus, Howard Harrington, appeared at her door one day. My mother, he said awkwardly, she's 85, after what happened. After what I did, I realized I've been a terrible son. He handed her a check with many zeros for your program. No publicity, no tax write-off. Just ... help people like her. Under Ellie's leadership, the in-home care program expanded to serve hundreds of elderly residents. But every Tuesday afternoon, no matter how busy her schedule, Ellie still visited Margaret's apartment for tea. They often watched the buses stop outside. Now, each driver carefully helped elderly passengers disembark, a new company policy that Margaret had personally advocated for after coming forward with her story. You changed my life too, you know, Ellie confessed one rainy afternoon, reminiscent of the day they'd met. If I hadn't stopped to help you, Margaret patted her hand affectionately. That's how life works, dear. We think we're extending a hand to help others up, never realizing they're actually helping us rise as well. Sometimes the greatest transformations begin with a simple fall and the brave hand that reaches out when everyone else turns away. For in that moment of connection, both lives are forever altered, the one who fell and the one who stopped to help them rise again. 1 year to the day after Margaret's fall, she and Ellie stood before a crowd at the grand opening of the Wilson Jenkins Elder Advocacy Center. The former viral video, now a symbol of transformation, played on screens throughout the building, not to shame, but to educate. The teenager who had filmed Margaret's fall was there too, now an intern at the center after a judge had sentenced him to community service. He had discovered, to his surprise, that the elderly had stories worth hearing rather than just moments worth mocking. Our society is only as strong as how we treat our most vulnerable, Margaret addressed the crowd, her voice steady and powerful. Today, we turn humiliation into humanity, cruelty into compassion, and isolation into community. As she spoke, buses stopped outside, depositing seniors for the center's first day of operations. Each driver helped their elderly passengers down the steps with patience and respect, a ripple effect that had started with one woman's fall and another's decision to stop and help. If this story of compassion and unexpected friendship touched your heart, be sure to subscribe to Toxic Tales for more stories that show how kindness can transform lives in the most surprising ways. Share in the comments if you've ever witnessed a small act of kindness that created a ripple effect of change. Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to stop when everyone else walks by.